Welcome back to Day Rates, the show we talk about design.
And money.
Today we've got Ross Mason on.
Ross.
Tutorial
Ross.
maker,
Yo.
3D artist, NFT creator, many things, right?
Very talented individual. How are you going, Ross?
Talented.
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Yeah, going good.
Good,
We're
man.
trapped at home. I don't know if Joel clued you in, but yeah, we're in lockdown in Sydney, so we're
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so very socially rusty, very alone in our homes, but hence the cozy theme that we got for today. So yeah, I think we kick off. Yeah, we found your stuff through YouTube a while ago. Well, Joel put me onto your work, and we've learned a lot from you. So it's great to have you on the podcast and pick your brain about a few things and what you're up to. But we figured
Pleasure
maybe
to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, legend. Yeah, we figured maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about how you got into 3D motion and why you picked this career and how it all started.
Yeah, sure. So it's a bit of a long story, but we'll go through it. So probably the first time I ever used Cinema 4D, which is the software I use for all my 3D work, was probably when I was around like 15, and I'm 23 now, so probably like 7-8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
You're so young. You got so much time ahead of you. You're free.
I know. And yeah, it's kind of a weird way I fell into it. So obviously I've always been like massive into gaming, and back then, even though esports wasn't a massive thing, there was still like these kind of like gaming clans, like if you heard of FaZe and all those kind of teams. Yeah, so they had those going on back then, but it wasn't to the same level it is now. They didn't have all the tournaments. It wasn't really a paid thing. There was just people doing it for the fun of gaming. And, I used to play with my mates, and we used to have our own little clan, and we'd like edit these montages and stuff together. But I had to learn how to like edit all the clips together. So that's kind of when I started to learn After Effects, and then also creating like the banners for YouTube. So that was when it used to be like you could put artwork down the left and the right and the top. The whole layout of YouTube was completely different, and we had no one to like kind of create the artwork for our YouTube channel. So I took it upon myself to learn Photoshop, After Effects, and Cinema 4D, so that we could do some like 3D work with kind of the layout of our YouTube channel, or if I was doing 3D for the montages and stuff like that. So it all came about because of gaming and wanting to be able to show our work and trying to edit these montages and basically create some sort of artwork for our YouTube channel.
So we don't want to incriminate you or anything, but these were paid for versions of these softwares, right?
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way.
It goes without saying, yeah. So you had all these different clans, these gaming organizations, and they always kind of had like an artists section of this, where like all the artists would create the YouTube banners, edit the montages for the gamers.
Right.
So like I was basically in these different gaming clans creating artwork for the gamers for these different clans, and I was using Cinema 4D to basically make their logo into 3D and be able to like use that for their YouTube banners.
Oh, nice.
So that's kind of where it all came about, and that was obviously like a very simple. I was literally just like extruding text, putting it in some like simple lighting studio, and kind of putting it to Photoshop and just doing some minor edits and giving it to them so they can use it for their banners. But that's how I first kind of dived into Cinema 4D.
Damn, it's not a bad teenage hustle. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was decent. I did start to like, even back then, it was like super cheap. Like I'd make a banner for like 10 quid or something, like literally like pennies. But obviously back then, that still was pretty good. And yeah, that's kind of how I dived into it. And that's obviously led me up to where I am today. I then went on when I was at school to study graphic design for GCSE. I don't know what that is equivalent where you guys are, but picked that as one of my subjects. But that was more like Photoshop side of things. But I was still doing cinema like in my own time, and I was kind of like implementing that into the graphic design work I was doing. So I was always kind of like tinkering. Then I went to uni, studied graphic design again for 3 years because I didn't really, even though I'd picked up cinema back when I was like 15, I never really kind of, that wasn't my main focus. My main focus at the time was like Photoshop and After Effects. That was kind of where my passion was. I just did that as like a little side thing.
And what's the mix today? Are you still doing some of that work, or is it all 3D?
It's pretty much all 3D now. So yeah, I studied graphic design for 3 years at uni and started to dive back into cinema, probably in my second year, and I graduated last year. So this is only like a few years ago. But that's when I kind of dived back into cinema, like seriously, started doing motion design, so dived back into After Effects. But I already had kind of like a foundation, like a decent knowledge from when I used it all those years ago when I was younger. But obviously when I was younger, I was literally just doing bare minimum, like extruding text and logos. But it still gave me like a good starting point to go from.
Awesome.
I feel like that's a good lesson for like kids in general. It's good to have something basic to start with because it's just such a big field. Like 3D in general, there's so many moving parts. And if you have a simple task like make this logo look good, that's a great starting point. Like I used to do these tiny houses. That was my start because I just wanted to do like these little low poly images. And at least it got me comfortable in the software, you know? That's all I needed.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, then in my second year, dived more into 3D, into After Effects, and I started interning in my second year of uni because I only had to go into university like 2 days a week. So then the other 3 days I was working at a design studio in the town that my university was at. And I was purely just doing 3D and motion for them. So like it was a branding agency. And I would just basically do all the 3D work they needed. Like for example, we worked with you heard of the company Rocker? They do like bathroom. No, okay.
No,
They do like I don't know if they're worldwide or not, so I'm not entirely sure. But they basically do anything bathroom related, like kitchen, like sinks and stuff like that. So I would do like renderings for that, or they sometimes have like pop-up exhibitions. So I would do like interior visualizations, basically just for the client to use. And that's probably where I started getting into it seriously because I obviously had to do it for my job. But I was still at that point felt pretty fresh to it. Like I was using physical renderer, so I hadn't dived into anything like Redshift or Corona or Octane or anything like that. And then third year, I got an internship at another agency in London. So every week, basically, I was doing the same thing at uni for 2 days a week, then interning for 3 days in London. But that's 3.5 hours from where I am currently.
Shit.
Right.
So every week I was traveling up to London on the coach, 3.5 hours there, 3.5 hours back. Again, doing the same thing, motion and 3D for them. And I did that throughout the whole of my last year of uni. So it was a pretty busy, stressful time.
Man, that would have killed you.
I don't have that kind of dedication. I just wouldn't have started the career at that point. I'd be like, that's it. I'm out.
It was very tiring. It was very stressful as well. But we pulled through. And then I worked there for 6 months when I finished uni full time. But obviously that was when COVID kicked in. So I never actually got to fully move to London. So I just was working from home. And then that's when I made the leap to freelance, which I've been doing since November.
Oh,
Right.
nice.
And it's all going well. I've seen from your stories and stuff like that, man. You must be like super busy. Like,
Yeah, it kind of all just like fell into place. So I've always done like bits and bobs on the side, like freelance gigs, but only like small ones, because obviously I always worked full time, so I didn't have the time to do big projects.
sure.
But I was getting like a steady income of these like side projects to the point where I felt comfortable that if I left my daytime job, I'd probably be okay.
Nice.
And I've always wanted to work for myself. I've always wanted to freelance. So when I thought, this is probably as good as time as ever to go for it, I just handed in my notice, and I've been fully booked up since. But it was pretty kind of like all the stars aligned because in the week that I was finishing my daytime job, my full job, I didn't have any work lined up, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? I've got nothing lined up. I'm just going to literally didn't know what to do. And then the Friday, so the last day I finished, and obviously Monday would be when I was a freelancer. I had someone reach out to me, and it was a month's booking for
No
a project
way.
for Adobe.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, dude.
Yeah.
Cheering.
So I did that for that month, and that was obviously a really sick project to be my first project to do work for Adobe. It was really sick. And then yeah, I've just been fully booked ever since.
Oh,
Everything
damn.
just kind of fell into place, and it was weird because I wasn't promoting that I was freelancing.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but for some reason, like emails just kept coming in for more jobs and more bookings, and it all just kind of fell into place almost. So it's yeah, I've definitely been lucky.
Do you think YouTube like probably had a hand in that?
Yeah, definitely. It's quite funny actually. I get quite a lot of work come from YouTube,
Right.
which is like it's not that strange, but it's like from so say someone works at an agency, they watch like one of my videos to learn something, and then they mention me to like their boss, and then their boss reaches out and says, "Oh, one of our employees saw you on YouTube, and do you think you could help us out with this project?" And it kind of usually goes like that.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, YouTube has definitely helped me to land some work.
I've noticed the
Awesome.
same, like from us doing day rates and also like putting work on Behance and stuff like that in Instagram. It is always another designer that recommends you to a boss. So it's
Yeah,
funny the parallels there. Because yeah, for ages we were doing it and we were getting just like the worst inbounds. It would be like some small mom and pop store that just had like no money and no idea. But then recently it's been that kind of flow, which seems to be a great way to get business, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I definitely need to get back to it.
Yeah.
It's something I want to like make more of an effort for and like kind of make that one of my more main priorities, but it's just finding the time to do it.
Yeah. Cursed
Sure.
by your own success. Once you booked up, all the personal stuff just goes out the window, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so actually, kind of speaking about your client work, what's that been like? Has it been mostly direct to client, or are you working with studios a lot? What's the kind of mix? And
Yeah, it's a lot with studios, which was strange because when I went before I did freelance and I was doing little side jobs, it was always like direct to the client, usually just like a one-on-one, small like individual project. But now it's all studio, all agency work. Probably because they have usually a bigger budget than if you're just working with like a direct to client.
yeah,
Um, and they usually have the bigger projects as well. So yeah,
yeah.
it's typically directly with studios at the moment.
Whereabouts are you located now? You said you were like 3.5 hours away from London. I'm just curious, like where you're at.
Yeah, so that when I say 3.5 hours, that is on the coach. If you take like the train, it's like an hour and a half. So
Right.
it's not nothing crazy. But I'm based in a town called Gloucestershire, which obviously you're not going to have heard of, but it's like literally in the middle of nowhere. It's in the countryside, so I literally am just surrounded by fields and trees and cows and sheep and stuff. So it's
Yeah,
quite
nice.
nice. It's
Yeah, that's
literally the
pretty
polar
nice.
opposite of London.
I think I heard you were actually thinking about moving to London. Is that for like work or just because you just want to change that city life or?
Yeah, so I've been talking. I've got a couple of friends that have a studio in London. They're both freelancers, but they like share a space together.
Right.
And they've got some spare desks going, so we've been talking. I'm potentially moving up there. So just looking at places at the moment, trying to find the right one, and yeah, so potentially moving to London.
Yeah,
Nice,
nice.
man.
Well, it's kind of like these days, the like truly after Corona, it doesn't matter where you're at. Like it's only Zoom chats and emails now, so it's not the pressure to
Yeah,
be anywhere, which is kind of strange. I don't know.
yeah. I think it's like whenever I've been to London before, like when I worked there throughout my third year, I always loved being there, like the hustle and bustle and being in the thick of it. And I think because I've lived literally in the middle of nowhere my whole life, I think I'd need that,
Yeah,
like that
Yeah.
polar opposite, just to experience it. So yeah, I
yeah,
think I'll
nice.
just be there just to kind of mill about and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Nice,
Well, while
man.
you're young, it's the perfect time. Now I'm like an old man out in the suburbs. This just happened in the last 2 years, and I'm like, oh, miss my youth, like just being near other people and doing stuff. Um, but yeah, in terms of like working with the studios and 3D work and bigger projects, like what's that like? Are you normally the only person doing Cinema 4D and whatever your niche is, or is it teams? And how does that typically work?
So recently I've worked on projects where there's been other people. So I just finished a project, which I don't think I can talk about, but
Yeah.
there were like three other 3D designers. So the work was like split between us, and we basically would be assigned, like I'd be assigned a couple of scenes, they'd be assigned a couple of scenes, and then sometimes we pick up other people's files and just kind of work off that. And it was all on Dropbox, which is like, now I just work on Dropbox completely, even for my own stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's just so useful being able to like access it from a different computer and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But most of the projects I do, I'm the only 3D designer, which I think I think it is a good thing in some ways, as long as like the work isn't crazy and you're not flat out, because at least then you have like, you fully understand everything you're doing. Whereas like when you're working in a group and I have to go in and look at someone else's file, it's just like a mind fuck. Like I literally have no idea what's going on if they haven't organized the project file, which I won't even get into that. But yeah, it can be tricky sometimes if it's quite a big project and there's a lot of you on it. But yeah, most of the time it's just me. It's it's just me on it, which I don't mind, to be honest.
Yeah.
Are you doing like mainly just like a lot of stills and stuff for your client work, or are you actually doing more animation yet? Or
so I like to do animation, but a lot of the projects I've been getting at the moment are stills.
right?
Like a lot of like abstract surreal renders. Like, I'm not sure if you saw the recent work I did with Monopo London.
Yeah, that was awesome, man.
Thank you. It was for a villa company, and they were bringing out like a new range of villas that they had, and they basically just wanted some like surreal renders, like visuals to like go with the new villas. So that one I was working on by myself, which was nice, and they just set me a brief for each one. But yeah, it's a lot of stills at the moment. I do want to branch out to animation. I've worked on a few animation projects which have been cool, but majority of it is stills, which I quite like, to be honest. I want to do more like product rendering stills.
Yeah, I saw you did like an audio unit on your website. There was one that was that. It's like really nice and clean work. So I could definitely see you going that direction.
Yeah, thank you. That was actually, I did that one because I wanted to kind of draw in more product rendering clients. So I have that speaker upstairs and I use it all the time. So
yeah, nice.
I was like, I'll just take something I use and that I actually have interest in. And I only spent a few days on it, so it's nothing too crazy. But yeah, I think it's definitely helped to bring in more of that type of work.
Yeah.
So and that's kind of like what I'm doing now, where I'm doing more of like the nature surreal shots, because I really enjoy doing that type of work. So basically the personal work I do is obviously for myself, but also to try drawing clients that are going to give me that type of work as well.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big lesson for young designers. Like that was such a change with us. It's just starting to do some personal projects. And it's just so nice getting those inbounds from that. Because if it's only word of mouth from what you've already done, you just get the same work. Like we did finance animations, and my God, like so many of those, but you just get sick of it. So you need to do your own work to branch out and build your portfolio.
Exactly, yeah. And you learn so much from doing your personal projects as well.
Yeah.
I always try to do something that challenges me just a little bit, and try to learn something new with each project. Like this wasn't a personal one, it was a client one, but I worked on this sofa project like a month or so ago. I'm not sure if you saw it on my Instagram. And it was like all these different combinations of sofas, like a 1-seater, 2-seater, 3-seater corner unit with all the different variations. And it was, in the end, there was going to be like 500 different images when you have like all the different combinations. Like it was crazy. But through that, I learned about how to like use the take systems and use tokens for like file naming and stuff like that. So now I use that in all my projects.
Nice.
So
I
there's always
to
something to learn.
Yeah. I've seen the take system come up, but I've just like not engaged with it. You know, it's always those technical things. I'm like, screw it. You know, like I need to do that stuff as well.
I had heard about it before, but I never like fully dived into it. But it's not too difficult, to be honest, and it like saves so much time, because you can basically create like all the different variations. So like all the different textures I had, basically every combination, and just hit one button and it will render them all out for you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you did them all manually, you'd have to like literally render them one by one. So I just left it on overnight and it just went through them all for me, which was nice.
Damn.
Nice.
Yeah, and like speaking of learning and personal development, I've seen that you play around with lots of different software packages as well. Like I've seen you get into Houdini and all that kind of good stuff. Is that it? And I've tried. I've spent all that money. I spent like $7,000 getting a Houdini license, and now it's like sitting there just collecting dust on my computer. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta open that back up and start dropping nodes again. But Yeah, is any of that stuff exciting at the moment, or you mostly stuck back into Cinema 4D and Redshift?
I like learning new softwares. I kind of go in like waves of depends how motivated I am at the time.
Yeah.
Like when I started learning Houdini, I was like, okay, I'm actually going to knuckle down and learn how to use this.
Yeah.
And I did that for like a few weeks, and I actually was starting to feel confident with it. And I don't know why, but for some reason, just as I was starting to make progress, I just completely forgot about it. I think I must have been like busy with work or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do really enjoy learning new softwares. I've realized that as I've kind of got older, that I find the most enjoyment when I'm learning new things. I think that's why as well I like doing the YouTube, because I get that same feeling from when I'm like teaching people to do things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always try to learn new software. So I've literally just picked up Marvelous Designer. I used the trial and it was really good, and then I just thought I'd buy it because I've had some projects come about for like doing clothing renders and stuff. So it's useful to have that, and for like cloth sims as well. But yeah, Houdini, I'd love to be able to nail it down, but it's just whether I can have the motivation and energy for it.
Right.
Yeah, I was doing about a month of it where I was like doing it every day and trying to practice and making some renders. And then I think it's like you, I got busy with client work again and back in Cinema 4D. And it's just so easy to forget all the little coding things you have to remember to isolate and all that kind of stuff. It's so technical. I feel like you have to have a job that makes you do it every day. Otherwise, it's just too hard as a software package. But
well, I was doing those like daily renders, like using Houdini. I did that for like a few weeks.
Yeah.
And then I was doing like the reels to go along with them of like how I made it, like the breakdowns and stuff.
Yeah.
Which was like I found really useful for me because it kind of reinforced that knowledge, and like because I had to explain it, then I remembered it easier.
Oh, true.
But like even simple things like that, because I haven't used it for like a couple months now, I probably would have forgotten all of it. Now I just have to do it again.
Yeah.
So I think it's something you do have to do. Probably with like any software, you just have to do it consistently.
Yeah.
Until you get to a point where you're comfortable and you're not going to forget it.
I feel like that is one of the burdens of doing 3D work in general. Is there is actual genuine competition in software. So there's so much to be learned. Like people are all going over to Unreal now and trying to render stuff out there. And I was opening that up and I found I'm like, fuck, do I have the energy to learn a whole new package? But if you don't, then you become the old man that becomes like, oh, I'm using whatever it is, like some old ass piece of software. So
it's a dark rabbit hole. 3D. There's so much to learn, and it feels like they're constantly bringing out new software as well. Like I bought X Particles for Cinema 4D because I didn't want to dive into Houdini.
Yeah.
And I think I've used it like once.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because I was thinking about doing the same thing, but now I don't know. I feel like it would just be one of those things where like you get it and I just never touch it. It would just be a waste of money.
Yeah.
It literally was. I was like, it was like whenever I go through like waves of motivation, I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn this software. I'm going to like get it down. And then I bought it and I started watching tutorials and I was like, oh, this is so complicated.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't be bothered with this. But probably, and then I was also thinking like X Particles is basically like a baby version of Houdini. So I may as well just learn Houdini, and then that can do like everything. But yeah, then I didn't get around to doing that either. So I've kind of lost out on both sides.
Well, you're 23. We're like approaching 30. So you still have like a whole decade ahead of you to learn Houdini. Whereas we've already blown it. It's too late for us. We can't fucking do it now. Oh yeah. And so I mean, in terms of like I feel like you are really consistent. Like you've got a really good social media presence. Like you're doing the YouTube stuff, even if it's more sporadic now that you're busy. You've been posting stuff on Instagram, like just so consistently, and your feed looks consistent, all that kind of good stuff. Do you find that it's like a motivator for you to produce work, or now that you're busy with clients, is it just an extra stress? Like, how's it sitting with you, social media?
I think now it's an extra stress, because I think now, like, I've got to a point now where I don't actually like being on social media that much.
Yeah.
Like, I used to post all the time. Like literally like every day without fail. And now I feel like it's more of an effort because I'm so busy doing client work that by the time I finish that, I'm like so tired. I'm like, last thing I want to do is start making work for Instagram.
Yeah.
But then like I said, I kind of have waves of like some periods I'm really motivated and I'm like, I want to smash out loads of personal work. And there's other times where I just want to like, just sit back and not do anything.
Yeah.
And also like as much as I love like engaging with people on Instagram, I do use that to get work. So now I'm like flat out with work. I'm like I can ease off Instagram a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but my goal for next year is to do less client work and go back to doing more personal work for like Instagram, and
Yeah.
because that is what gets me excited, is like doing my own work and putting it out there and getting everyone's reactions and doing like the YouTube and stuff like that. So I do want to shift back to doing more of that, but I think just because I'm so busy with client work, I haven't got the motivation to do the rest of it as well.
Yeah.
Fair.
So it's a difficult one because like the Instagram is what got me all the work in the first place, and now I've got the work. I don't have the time and the energy to put into Instagram, so it's kind of like it's a tricky one.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know, much love to everyone that has done the NFT thing too, because like there's some really exciting stuff that's come out of it. And I know that you've put some stuff up there too, but I found that NFTs really killed my love of social media. Like everyone was just posting so much all of a sudden. And I realized how derivative so many of my own ideas were. Like everyone was posting the same thing. And I was just like, shit, like I'd see something, I'm like, I had that idea for a personal project, but I didn't do it. It just means that a million people had that idea. So I'm kind of like, it like really nuked my desire to do personal projects in general. I'm trying to get that back now by just like not looking at it so much and just trying to like go away and do whatever weird thing I want to do. But I found that I've spent like hours work on things and there's no like productive thing at the end of it. Like I kind of need to be locked into that system to produce things that look functional in the end. So I don't know. It's a strange.
Yeah, I think now you've mentioned it, I think that was kind of the turning point for me as well. That really just like I literally, especially Instagram wasn't as bad, but like Twitter was just like a whole nother level. Like
everyone moved to Twitter. I haven't moved to Twitter, but everyone's like, oh, I'm in Twitter now.
Don't do it.
Twitter.
Don't bother doing it. Don't.
So it's an NFT thing? Because I was wondering why everyone was doing it, but I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, I think NFTs are just way bigger on Twitter. I think it's because people are like talking more and like interacting more on there. So I don't know, maybe people engage with that type of work a bit more. But it's literally like non-stop. Like I've muted like anything related to NFTs on Twitter, and it still pops up on my feed. There's like no escaping it. So I think that really kind of seeing that much content in such a short space of time just really like took its toll, and I was like, I just want to get off social media for a bit.
That's
and then like just with social media in general, like you're just constantly comparing yourself to others, kind of like what you said with making personal projects. So it's really hard to, I don't know, maybe some people use that for motivation, but for me it's like I just feel like I'm way behind with like everyone else if I'm like constantly on social media looking at how well other people are doing.
Yeah, same.
Which is great for them, but like for me it just like doesn't keep me motivated. So I'd rather just stay off, do my own thing, and then I'll just come back when I've got work.
Yeah. I feel like I'll see other people's good work and it might spark this competitive thing in me where I want to start a personal project. I'm like, all right, that's it. I want to do something good. But then that motivation doesn't drive like me to take my time and do a good job of it. You know, it's only good to like ignite the fucking engine, but it doesn't put any more fuel in after that. Like so it's strange in that way. I'm really trying to stay away from it now, but also too, like now I'm not posting so much and doing all this, I'm kind of getting less back from it. So the more you stay away from it, you kind of start to just drift off, and then you're just a crazy person learning Blender in your house. Like no one gives a fuck. So it's a strange time. But yeah, like
one.
In terms of like NFTs, what do you reckon about them? Do you reckon they're going to be around for a bit, or is it a flash in the pan?
Yeah, I haven't, to be honest, I literally have not paid any mind to NFTs, but I think they are going to be around for a while. From what I do see of it, it seems like it's just getting like bigger and bigger. I think it will change to be more of like a focus on quality though, because obviously we know like as it started out, people were just like replicating tutorials and selling them for like so much money.
Yeah.
I think that has kind of faded out a little bit. I think people are focused a little bit more on quality, but I think that'll become more prominent as time goes on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like hopefully
I
find
don't
some more like functional uses over time. I don't know what it would be, but it seems like right now it is like, oh, this Instagram post is now worth a lot for some reason. The technology can do more than that, but that's what it's being used for right now. So I don't know. someone will be smart and figure some shit out. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
We've got a few more to like wrap it up. A couple questions. I was thinking, you are quite young and you've established yourself really well in the industry. I'm kind of wondering, where do you see yourself over the next decade? Like you mentioned, you want to lead back towards personal work. Do you want to work for a studio at some point? Do you want to start your own studio? What are you thinking?
Ideally, I'd love to just work for myself
Yeah.
for the foreseeable future. I don't really want to have to go back to working for someone else again. Mostly because I don't like being told what to do. So
Yeah.
I like to just kind of do my own thing, go down my own lane. But I do want to, the goal would be to either make YouTube more of like the main priority and just release like tutorials and content on there. And that would be kind of like my main shtick. Or I do quite enjoy doing the like project files on Gumroad. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. So maybe like I could do the YouTube and the Gumroad. But still, yeah, working for myself, freelancing. But I'd love to be able to shift more to doing more of the personal stuff and providing value to people that way. So hopefully next year, if I kind of do more of that side of things, I'll be able to bring that to fruition and hopefully depend on that a bit more.
Launch
Well, yeah, like Miles said earlier, like I found you on YouTube a while ago, like ages ago, and that was super. Like your videos were super helpful for me because we were only just really. Well, Miles had already been dabbling in 3D and stuff, but I never had it. I was always terrified of doing it. But I found your videos really helpful and like you're very approachable, and just the fact that you had Cinema 4D and Redshift as a package, I was like, this is it. This is what I need. And I just, so I reckon you should like really stick with the YouTube stuff, man. I feel like you've got a huge following and I reckon it can only get better from there, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you. Well, what I found was there's not that many videos on Redshift in general anyway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tutorials on like how to create specific effects or do specific animations and stuff like this. Like a lot more on how to do certain effects, but not on the actual like rendering side of things.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably like where my focus is, which is maybe what sets me apart a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
And would probably be the lane I'd go down, because like a lot of the tutorials out there, they show you how to make like something that looks cool, but then not how to give it like a nice, like high quality finish.
Yeah.
So I think like, and even the projects I do, I find the most enjoyment out of like the lighting and texturing side of things. So that's probably where I'd go down. But yeah, thank you.
No worries, man.
I think too, the other thing that stands out about your tutorials is they're actually like design focused. Like you look at the images and there's a nice design eye to them. Whereas you go to YouTube and you try to search any software package and there's just so much like, technically it's good what they're teaching you, but it's to the eye, it looks like trash still. So you're like, oh God, like you have to watch through this whole thing and you end up making like some greeble cube that you don't really want to make anyway. So I feel like that's nice that the content actually suits if you're more in the design space, which is good.
Yeah, thank you. I think that probably comes from maybe having more of like a design background and like doing that before I got into 3D, because I think I've trained my eye to know what looks good. I'd like to think so anyway. So yeah, maybe that's where that comes from. But yeah, I think that's definitely kind of what does help me to stand out a little bit. But yeah, I'd love to get back into the YouTube. I just need to find the time for it and really just smash it. Because like at the beginning of this year, I think I did like a few months of posting like every week consistently. And it was actually doing really well. Like the channel was growing and the views were growing. So it was like, if I just kept up the momentum, then I could probably go quite far with it. So that's the goal for next year.
You're doing content where you actually have to produce something, whereas we do lazy content like this, it's way easier, right? Purposely lo-fi like this, if you embrace a garbage look, it's much easier. Although that being said, we're very inconsistent. I think this is the first thing we've done in like 3 months or something.
Yeah.
And I guess to wrap it up, we asked Reese Parker this one as well, but do you have any tips for younger artists that are looking to start a career or kind of level up where they're at in their career?
Ooh. That is a big one. I would say consistency is key, even though I'm not consistent myself. When I was younger and like I was learning cinema, I was literally just spending like every day on it. Like even if you're not posting on social media, like that doesn't really matter as long as you're actually sitting down, learning the software, learning something new, and having fun whilst you're doing it. I think that is the most important thing, because if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to keep it up. That's probably why.
Looking at you, Houdini.
Always like, yeah, exactly. Because like, even though I did find it enjoyable, it was like still so painful to like learn because there's so much involved.
Yeah.
So what I would say on this is what did actually help me, learn Houdini is like just start off really small, even if you think like what I'm learning is like pointless, even if it's something really small, like take that as a victory because that's one thing that you didn't know before.
Yeah.
So just like take baby steps and it's going to make the journey a whole lot easier because you're not like overwhelming yourself with loads of new knowledge. So technically that's what I would recommend if you're trying to like actually, I suppose, improve your career or like go further with your career. I would just make as many connections as you can within the industry and just like talk to people. Like when I was at uni and I was like starting to dive into like this world, I was just like reaching out to people all the time. Like even just to say, really love your work, would love to like work together one day or something. And there's like so many friends that I've made just by like reaching out and saying, hey, that I appreciate their work. And like having those contacts, you just never know where that's going to lead to in the future. Like that first freelance gig I got was because I was speaking to my mate Chris, and he was too busy to take on the project, and he recommended me to them. And that was just because one day I'd reached out to him like months prior, just saying, really love your work. And we kind of just went from there. So I would just make as many connections as you can. Just kind of keep your eye like on the industry and people and what's going on. Yeah, that's probably what I'd recommend.
Damn, that's pretty
Awesome,
good.
man.
I wish I'd taken that advice 10 years ago, but
Yeah, man.
it's too late for us. Look at us. We're washed up now, Joel.
I would have still had some hair.
Well, dude, thanks so much for chatting with us. Yeah, this interview is our return to YouTube, so we'll post this interview, and then like 12 months later, we'll post another thing. So yeah, it's a little drop.
Maybe I can come back in 12 months' time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll do part 1, and then fucking 2022 we'll do part 2, and that's it. We're done.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it was really nice to speak to you, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
No worries, dude.
We'll put fucking Ross Mason's details up and shit, and check his stuff out down below, because yeah, he's still posting tutorials and his Instagram's always popping off, so go check that stuff out.
And there's going to be a lot more coming.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, shit.
You better save your money, people. You sign up for that Patreon when it happens.
Yeah.